This is me, and I was going to be using a wheel to decide my entire college career. I was going to use this wheel to figure out which position I play, which school I commit to, and more. To start off, I needed to spin the wheel to decide which side of the ball I'd be playing on, and after landing on offense, it was time to figure out which position on offense I'd be playing. After spinning the wheel, it was determined that I'd be a running back, and luckily for me, I'd be a speed back. I then spun the wheel to decide which of the first 3 teams I picked that I'd be interested in, which resulted in me picking Appalachian State, USF, and Vanderbilt. It was time to play out the remainder of my senior season, and on the first play of the game, I was able to take this simple run play all the way down for a 58-yard rush, and I dominated the rest of the game, leading to me becoming a 2-star recruit, and these 3 schools were interested in me after the game. Of course, I'd be using the wheel to decide which of those 3 schools I select and add to my recruiting board, which ended up resulting in Boise State. And in my second home game, I was able to show off my impressive speed. I was able to take this simple run to the outside for 19 yards, while also being able to show how elusive I was and how I had great ball carrier vision, resulting in this touchdown here, and I would go on to have an insane stat line yet again. These 3 schools were interested in me after the game, and I would repeat that process all the way through my entire senior season, which would go great for me as I would lead my team to a state championship win, posting yet another amazing stat line. And by the end of the year, this is what my recruiting board looked like, as I was a 5-star recruit and one of the best running backs in the nation, and there were a lot of great teams and a lot of bad teams that were interested in me. I was nervous putting my faith in this wheel, as there were a lot of great teams that I could potentially play for and some bad teams mixed in there as well, so I definitely wasn't too disappointed when the wheel landed on Oregon, and now my college career had begun. I was very thankful that the wheel landed on a top Power 5 school, but my offensive production wouldn't come from anything but punt return and kick return, as I was the 4th string running back on the team, but luckily my speed was able to get me to the 40-yard line, and by the end of the game we went up 30 points as we ended up dominating FCS Southeast. I would have a position battle after my first game because of my amazing punt returns, which put me number 3 on the depth chart. Our next game would be against Virginia, and even though I was the 3rd string back, my role wouldn't change much, as I was only mainly used on the punt return and kick return. It was different in college, as I was no longer the fastest person on the field and got tracked down easily, but thankfully for me, my team was good, and we ended up beating Virginia by just 1 point after I had a couple good returns on both the punt and kick return side of the ball. I had been getting more comfortable taking returns back, and I was able to show off some elusiveness here at the beginning of the second quarter, and our offense and defense would go on to dominate the rest of the game. After that game, I would have yet another position battle, which I was able to successfully complete, putting me to 2nd on the depth chart. With being number 2 on the depth chart, I was finally getting some carries against Cal, and even though I wasn't being used much, I was just happy that I was finally getting the ball. I was proving to coach that I could be a versatile weapon for them to use in the offense, as I almost took this kick back all the way, but I got tripped up, and thankfully I was showing some usefulness on the punt returns, and after my quarterback made this terrible read on the zone option, the Cal defender would end up picking up the ball and taking it all the way to the house for a touchdown, leading us to go down multiple scores. That would be the nail in the coffin for us, as we got absolutely shut out at our home field, and I was extremely upset with my performance, so I made sure I took some steroids to hopefully make me play better. Our next game would put us up against Deion Sanders and his Colorado Buffaloes, and we were hoping to get off to a fast start. Then it was clear that my coach had began trusting me more, as he gave me the ball on 3rd and 7, and I was able to punch it in for my first touchdown of my career later that drive, and I couldn't believe my progress. Even though I'd been taking steroids and slowly getting better throughout the season, I still wasn't fast enough to completely outrun everybody, but my offensive role had been getting bigger and bigger each and every game, and I began to silence the crowd. My confidence was at an all-time high, as I had 2 touchdowns this game, and I was running the ball really effectively. We would run the ball for the rest of the game, leading to an easy victory, and I would get my first Player of the Game award after my great performance. We continued Pac-12 play against 3-2 Washington, and I was able to get a good run to start off the game, but our offense had been struggling this entire game, as we only had 3 points with 2 minutes left in the first half, and defense was the moral of the story for this entire game, as we only had 6 points going into the last 2 minutes of the game, and unfortunately for us, our defense would give up the first touchdown of the game on this 1st and goal run, so we had less than a minute to drive down the field and get a touchdown, so luckily I was able to start us off here, and that play would kickstart what would be our game-winning drive, as Ty Thompson made this amazing play, and we would end up getting a tough win over Washington. After that game, I had another position battle, as I was able to officially cement myself in this offense, becoming the number 1 running back. We would continue Pac-12 play against Washington teams, as we were taking on Washington State. Thanks to steroids and practice, I had been steadily progressing this entire year, which was leading me to getting stronger on the offensive side of the ball. We would end up scoring on that drive, and we would go into the second half tied 10 apiece, and I had one of my first big runs of my career, as I was able to take this run to the outside, just getting past midfield. Even though I had been progressing each week, there were still things that I needed to work on, but with help from great blocking, I was able to get into the end zone later that drive. From there, we would go on to run out the rest of the clock, as we would beat another Pac-12 opponent, with me nabbing another Player of the Game award. Our next game would see us down 21 points in the second quarter, as we were playing against UCLA at home, and I was getting fed up with the terrible play from both sides of the ball, so I decided to run over a person and take it all the way down close to the 30-yard line. We would get a field goal later on in that drive, and it would take until less than 2 minutes left in the second quarter for us to get our first touchdown of the game, but the Bruins would answer right back before halftime, and we found ourselves down 18 late in the third, as our offense and defense were not playing well whatsoever. That big run by me would set up this this great play by Ty Thompson, which he read the defense perfectly. And with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we were down by 11 points, and we were driving down the field after this play by me. And I followed it up later on that drive with a touchdown from Ty Thompson. Scoring on our previous possession would give us a shot at a game-winning Hail Mary, which I was actually able to end up catching, but it wouldn't matter as it was a couple yards short of the goal line, leading to a heartbreaking loss to UCLA. 8 games into the season, we were still number 1 in the Pac-12 North, but we had a lot of tough games ahead of us. Yet again, we would find ourselves down early against another Pac-12 opponent as we were down multiple scores to Stanford towards the end of the first half, and it wouldn't be until the third quarter until we had some real offensive production as I was able to take this run to the outside followed by great blocking, and I was finally able to show off my speed as I took it all the way down to the house for my first big touchdown of the year. Unfortunately, other than that big play by myself and my great offensive line, we had no offensive production throughout the entirety of the game, and this touchdown late in the fourth was just for stat padding as we would go on to lose to Stanford. That loss would drop us from 1st to 4th in the Pac-12 North. If we wanted any chance to make our conference championship, we would not only need to win out, but we would need help from other teams losing within our conference. I would end up getting hurt on this play here. My legs were well rested as I wasn't put back in until the third quarter where we were up 24 points, and I started off my first carry by breaking multiple tackles and getting close to the red zone. We would go on to score that drive, and after I would end up getting shaken up at the end of this play, we would go on to win 45-0. It was more the same next game as we were down early in the game to Arizona, and it took until the third quarter for us to get a touchdown after this Ty Thompson read option. We would follow it up with a great drive on our next possession as I would get a touchdown, which would finally give us the lead. U of A would end up tying the game, and our goal from coach was to run out the rest of the clock, and after some amazing blocking, we were able to get all the way down to the red zone, and I was able to take this run in for a touchdown. I was finally becoming more and more comfortable with this team each and every week as my blockers and I were becoming in sync, as I would put up another great stat line leading to player of the game. Our only chance of making the Pac-12 championship would be for us to win our last game against our rival Oregon State, and Stanford would have to lose. I was getting sick and tired of our offense always playing terribly in the first half, so I wanted to start it off with a big bang as I was finally able to break around to the outside on a punt return and take it all the way down to the house as I had been getting faster and faster each week. That would be our only offensive production for the first half until the coach made an amazing play call leading to my easiest touchdown yet. From there, our offense and defense played really well as we would end up holding the lead all the way on through the fourth quarter, and I was able to take this simple run to the left side all the way down to the house yet again, finally being able to show off my amazing speed to everyone else. It was great to see the team so ecstatic about a huge win. The fans were ecstatic as we would end up destroying Oregon State in the Civil War, as I would end up boasting another great game. Unfortunately for us, Stanford would end up winning their game, and they would go on to beat UCLA in the Pac-12 championship, and we would be taking on Virginia Tech in the SDCCU Holiday Bowl. This was the last game of my first season as a college player, and this may be my very last one as an Oregon Duck, as I would be spinning a wheel at the beginning of next episode to decide if I stay or transferred, so I made sure I lived in the moment. There were certain points this year where I was extremely frustrated with the team as our coach would make terrible play calls throughout the game, but by the end of the year I became extremely comfortable within this offense as I was feeling comfortable being an Oregon Duck. Virginia Tech would end up hitting the game-tying field goal with only 6 seconds left, so with us only having a couple seconds to get down the field, I decided to take this kick return out of the back of the end zone, getting close to midfield range, which would give us a shot at a Hail Mary, and after all the receivers converged on the middle of the field, our tight end was able to catch the ball, and I had a perfect block to help him break away from defenders, and he took it all the way to the house, leading to us having a walk-off win. The players hoisted our coach in the air as we had an amazing win. The team and myself were completely blown away as this was a storybook ending to my first season as an Oregon Duck, and I had slowly fallen in love with this team. Alabama would go on to destroy Iowa State in the national championship, and I would finish with 1,059 rushing yards along with 9 touchdowns, while having an impressive 850 kick return yards, along with 630 punt return yards and 2 touchdowns. And like I said, I'd be using a wheel next video to decide if I stayed or transferred from Oregon.